Help Stephen A.
Oh, poor Stephen A. Smith. I can see it right here. You know that LMA song, Feeling So Deep in My Feelings? Watching that game, I knew Stephen A. Smith was going to be deep in his feelings. Stephen A., when did you turn it off? Third quarter? Fourth quarter? When did you put the misery away?
Third quarter.
Yeah, I knew it. Sorry, let me not laugh at your pain. I knew it. I knew it. I genuinely feel for Knicks fans because at the start of the season, this is a team on paper that to me was a clear-cut favorite. It took a generational run by Tyrese Halliburton and the best offense at that time in the NBA to keep them from advancing to the NBA Finals. And this year it's like, okay, we made the controversial coaching change. We're going to right the wrongs. But so far in the sample size against the best teams in the East, they are sub 500. They are 4-5 against the Cavs, the Celtics, and obviously the Pistons. And what I'll say here is I am more encouraged by far by what I've seen from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I say this because it is not easy to drop in a new player, James Harden, and honestly play your best version of basketball right after. Mind you, James Harden is probably one of the most heavily criticized players. Also, he left a good thing, the Clippers, that win streak, when he left for a great thing, which is now the Cleveland Cavaliers being 6-1 since he has arrived. I am in awe of what is happening in Cleveland because right now we're talking about no longer the Knicks coming out of the East, and obviously the favorites are the Detroit Pistons, but the Cleveland Cavaliers have absolutely entered the conversation, and that three right there probably made you sick, Stephen A. It probably made you sick because there was no New York Knicks defender in sight. They gave them too many easy looks. The Cavs just disposed of them quite easily, especially in the second half. Last, I'll say this. James Harden came for three reasons. One, he said he wants to win a championship, and to me that was interesting to say that and also back it up with his play. Two, he has to make Donovan Mitchell look great, and so far Don has looked happy and brought new life to this organization, to this franchise. Three, he had to really unlock the bigs. Jarrett Allen, since James Harden has arrived, 11 from 12 from the field, 10 for 16, 8 for 8, 5 for 8, 11 for 15, 4 for 6, 7 for 8 last night, averaging 20 points and shooting 77% from the field. I did not have that on my bingo card with where the Cavs were about 2 months ago. Now we're talking about them potentially being the ones, the squad, to make it to the NBA Finals.
Good point, Janae.
I wanted to look up what the New York Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges because I want everybody to understand the magnitude of that move. They gave up Bogdanovich, including 4 unprotected first-round picks in 2025, 2027, 2029, and 2031, and a protected first-round pick via Milwaukee to get Mikal Bridges. Now, we know that the brother can be relied upon to show up on the court. And we know that he's an Iron Man in that regard. But he's not even an all-star. The Phoenix Suns, didn't get that in return for Kevin Durant. The Dallas Mavericks didn't get that in return for Luka Doncic. You see what the Knicks have given up. And I tell this to America, in the basketball world, it is literally the only thing you can blame Jalen Brunson for. Because being the face of the franchise, the star of the New York Knicks, knowing basketball well enough to know what help you would need, you want your boy. Yes, you sacrificed over $100 million by signing early so the New York Knicks could go and get your boy. They ultimately give him $150 million, so you have your former college teammate at Villanova that's now with you in the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson didn't look at the NBA landscape and understand what it would take to win it all. Because the New York Knicks have Giannis Antetokounmpo this past summer, if they had about 2 or 3 of those picks. They have him, doggy. They have him, Shanae. But that didn't happen. And the reason why I find myself miserable is because I'm looking at the New York Knicks team right now that's clearly not the same without Tom Thibodeau. That grit and that grind that we saw from them the last couple of years, we're not seeing that now. There was slippage defensively, which we knew would occur. What we expected was an upgrade offensively. Karl Anthony Towns doesn't look the same. They don't look the same offensively from three-point range. I'm looking at a New York Knicks team right now, 3 of 24 in the fourth quarter, 1 of 12 from three-point range. In their 3 losses to the Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers this month, they've shot a collective 26 of 105. That is 25% from three-point range. Ladies and gentlemen, I usually don't say this on national television, but I'm pissed off. You don't even understand how pissed off I am at this New York Knicks team right now. You have a championship appearance, at the very least, within your grasp. And it looks like they've blown it because Boston has upgraded, because Jalen Brown has ascended, and Jason Tatum is going to return. The Detroit Pistons have ascended, and they got an axe to grind with the New York Knicks, and they've shown us because they've outscored them by 84 points and stomped them so bad there's immigration issues going on in the National Basketball Association because the New York Knicks are being exiled from the state of Michigan. That's how bad they've gotten their ass kicked by the Pistons, okay? And then you've got the Cleveland Cavaliers that go out and they get James Harden to pair with Donovan Mitchell. And by the way, despite James Harden's struggles in big games, we know the brother is an elite scorer when he wants to be. He's an elite point guard when he wants to be. And big men religiously are better with him on the basketball court because he knows how to get them the ball, and he's gifted enough to be able to spread the floor for them to operate in space when he's getting it to them and he's not choosing to launch long range. The New York Knicks have about 3 teams that are standing in their way right now, and I'm sick to my stomach because next year don't look no better when Tyrese Halliburton gets back. Orlando continues to ascend. I'm so disgusted I can't even put into words.
Mikal Bridges is the 5th best Knick, so you can't give up 5 picks for your 5th best player. He's not as good as Hart, not as important to the Knicks. He's not as good as Towns. He's not as good as an OG, and he's certainly not as good as
Anunoby.
That was a bad trade. All right. Now, I'm not going to kill Rose because that was a phenomenal move getting Brunson. GMs are not going to go, they're not going to be 100%. I hated the Thibodeau firing. I don't care what Steve says. I don't care what anybody says. That was Dolan who did it. I don't hear about the players, they didn't like the minutes. Nonsense. When they beat the Celtics, they were dancing on 7th Avenue, and everybody loved Thibodeau. Halliburton makes a shot out of a miracle, bounces 9 miles in the air. It goes in. That ball doesn't go in. The Knicks are in the final, and Thibodeau is still coaching the team. Now, as far as the scenario is with these 4 teams, I understand what Steve's saying. I get it. But I thought the same thing. And then I saw the Knicks play the 4th quarter against Houston on Saturday night. Well, that was a great comeback. Down 18. That was a great comeback. Grit, guts, figured it out. Got the little kid played well. The kid from the Pelicans did a very good job again. Alvarado did a nice job, played well, did an excellent job. And they won the game. So every time you were ready, then they came back and beat the Bulls. They were going to be flat. They win the game in the 4th quarter. Every time you think the Knicks are, you know what, they're the 4th best team, they surprise you and they go on these little runs here and they win games. And they are still very dangerous in these 4 teams. First off, the Celtics, let's see how Tatum handles it when he returns. Secondly, everybody in America is on the Piston bandwagon. They've won 2 playoff games. They don't have a second scorer. I got to see it. And thirdly, before everybody wants to go crazy about Harden, here's the problem with Cleveland. He has to dominate the game if you have him on your team. His ball's in his hands, the whole 9 yards. And when you have that kind of player, quarterback same way, when you have that player who has to dominate the game, when he plays badly, which he does all the time in big games, you're finished. Philadelphia, Clippers, Oklahoma City in the final. Houston, when he plays badly, when the chips are in the middle of the table, they lose. So I can't think that Cleveland now is going to be a team that's going to win the East. I still think, despite what Stevie just said, I still think the Knicks have a chance to get out of the conference.
Hold on. Chiney, really quick.
Doggy.
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Hell of a time to bring in Mikal Bridges, in my opinion. I mean, he shot better, you could argue, and took more shots last night than Karl Anthony Towns did. I mean, I know. Go ahead, Chiney. Go ahead, and I'll finish. Go ahead.
You're right on the money there, Shay, and I'm going to come back to it. But first, Doggy, I want you to know that the James Harden that you knew maybe 10 years ago is not the James Harden now. We've seen multiple iterations of James Harden, the guy who was a sixth man at OKC. I know him from the Houston Rockets. That was the MVP. We have the guy that called himself between Brooklyn and Philly the system, right? Mm-hmm. And people looked at him crazy. But now the James Harden that we know is truly a facilitator. And he played alongside Kawhi Leonard, who I think was fifth or sixth in usage, which is very similar to the usage that Donovan Mitchell had, which is why this transition actually is quite seamless, because he's not necessarily that dominant guy anymore. He's not the guy that, and I think the reason why he left Los Angeles for Cleveland is because he understood, especially with the up and down availability of Kawhi Leonard, he could not be that number one or number two consistently. He goes to a place where he's expected, honestly, to be more so number three. This is Donovan Mitchell's team. And then secondly, you have those bigs out there. You need Evan Mobley to eat, the reigning defensive player of the year. And on top of that, I mentioned Jarrett Allen's numbers. Those guys are kind of more priority in this scenario where James Harden is more of a facilitator than the old guy that we knew that was truly ball dominant. And then get to Shay's point, the biggest issue, Stephen A. Smith, because Stephen A., I don't know if I can see you. I hope I have enough power to bring him back on my screen. I want to see that chocolate. Stephen A., the biggest issue that you have and what you outlined with the top four teams in the East, all of the other teams, the Boston Celtics, the Detroit Pistons, all of these teams, the squads, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they now have found consistency. And the lack of consistency for the New York Knicks is their biggest problem right now. And the reason why they have a lack of consistency is the reason why you look at the box score and you see, how in the world could Karl-Anthony Towns only have 5 shots in this game? When your outside shooters, Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson, are 12 for 36 from the floor and shooting 25 or 27% as a team from three, you go to your big man, but then the big man only has 5 shots. That is the problem. If you fix that, maybe you'll have more of a chance.
He only took 1 shot in the second half. It's just all bad. It's all bad. And
Crazy.
The problem with the
That's
Knicks
him too, though. That's him too. Listen. Karl-Anthony Towns, you know my man, I did the commercial with him before the season began. I love Karl-Anthony Towns. I've known him for years. Let me tell you something right now. I'm not putting that totally on Mike Brown. You know, at some point in time, you got to have an attitude. This falls along the lines of what Shaq was trying to tell him the other day, Saturday night after they beat Houston, when Shaq was like, you got to be great. That's why Shaq was right. In other words, you got to go get it. You got to be some kind of attitude. Cats got to know, if we don't get Karl-Anthony Towns the basketball, we're going to have a problem with Karl-Anthony Towns because he ain't having it. You got to want it, and you got to go get it. There's no excuse on God's green earth unless he was just hurt and could not go at all for Karl-Anthony Towns to be taking 1 shot in the second half on this New York Knicks squad. 100%. There's no excuse.
It's bad. I thought they would respond better, especially after being down by so much in the fourth quarter against Houston. The loss to the Pistons, we were talking about how there was maybe some sort of oomph that was missing, and then they showed up like this in the second half against Cavs. Disappointing, the New York Knicks.